Former Ellsworth Police Chief Glenn Mosier was fired for showing up work drunk, according to a termination letter from the City Council.
According to the letter obtained by WABI last December 22nd, Mosier was notified of an officer-involved shooting.
The letter says Mosier was at home and admitted to having 5 beers between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. After Mosier was notified, he came in to support his officers.
The letter says Mosier was dropped off at the station by his wife at 11 p.m. after stopping at a store to buy gum and iced tea. Officers said Mosier was acting uncharacteristically loud and emotional, and they smelled alcohol on his breath.
The council says because he chose not to drive, picked up items that could be used to disguise the effects of alcohol, and the reports of other officers, they determined Mosier was under the influence when he arrived at the station.
Mosier was also carrying his off-duty firearm. The council said Mosier violated 4 town policies.
He was likely drunk when he reported to work after the shooting. He was likely drunk when he was carrying his off-duty firearm. He behaved unprofessionally by showing up under the influence and the way he acted while he was there, and he did not file a timely report about the incident before being put on leave 6 days later.